estate investment show ever. Here's the flip-flop investor himself, Todd Bayer.
Hey everyone, how we doing out there today? This is the Flip-Flop Investor Show, and I am your host, Todd Bayer, the Flip-Flop Investor himself. We are coming to you live from KCAA Studios here in beautiful Redlands, California. For those of you that don't know what we do, we get together every week and talk about real estate investing here in the Inland Empire. And we bring on a local expert every week and talk to them about what they do in real estate. And we, chat about it for a little while. So if you've been following along, every month we've been kind of going over a new theme. In January we went over, and I guess the theme is always the anatomy of like a deal. So from the very beginning is like the inception. You're looking at goal setting. So in January, we went over goal setting. Like, what are your goals? You want to become a real estate investor. So let's set some goals. Then in February, we covered some more things, which would be like business planning. So, okay, how do I achieve these goals? What's my business plan? What am I going to do? And then in March, we went over negotiating deals. And then in April, we went over, what the heck did we go over in April? I've forgotten all this stuff already. It's been a great ride so far, but now that we're in May, you know what we're doing is we're going over offering. And we kind of realized early on that offering was a tricky thing to cover, because when you talk about filling in like a residential purchase agreement, like the typical realtor form for purchasing a property, I mean, it's pretty basic. You can't really spend this month we got 5 weeks of this, we can't really spend 5 hours worth of radio time to talk about filling out an RPA. So instead, we kind of figured out, though, along the way, that the offer itself, what you write on the paper, it's such a minuscule aspect of the offering process. So what we actually will come to it. Well, we'll get to this point. Before that, I should probably introduce our guest today. Today, we have one of our favorite realtors in all of the United States. And he's probably the only realtor that's actually going to be working this weekend. His name is Connor Murphy. How you doing today, Connor?
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Pumped to be here.
Absolutely. I'm glad you could come on short notice.
Yeah, it's anything for you guys. Just make it happen.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Wow. So I think your mic might be off. I think I'm getting... Oh, you got to talk into the mic. That's what it is.
Oh, that'll help then, yeah.
That helps. Yeah. And you're also in like a punk band or something, aren't you?
Reggae rock, yeah.
Reggae rock, nice.
I don't do any singing, though. So.
Oh, that's why you're not comfortable with the mic, yeah.
Yeah.
You practically have to eat it in here, you got. Okay, so Connor, you've been on the show before. So for the people that are not familiar with your work, let's go into your background just a little bit and who you are and why anybody should listen to you about making offers on properties.
Well, I write tons of them, so that's one benefit that we have there. I've been a realtor for 5 years now. I've worked primarily in the high desert in Victorville, Hesperia, Apple Valley. Since working with you guys, I've branched out now, and I'm all over Southern California. We write offers on properties, every condition, every different type of seller. From, we buy properties at auction, we buy them from individual sellers, from companies, and so we just have a ton of experience doing that with you and with other individual investors as well.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people think that like pretty much everybody on our team is not entitled to just work to us. Like they're free to work with anyone they want. Like we don't tie anybody down in that regard. Which I don't know. I think I would prefer it to be that way myself, which is I guess why we set it up that way. But we have some deals going with Connor, where you're actually partnered up with us on, I think, is it one or two of them right now, I think?
One right now. I've tried for more, and that's where a lot of the experiences come in. But it's that was one of the attractions for me to working with you guys, was that I had the opportunity to see how you did it and be a part of that process, and then I could, because I've been on both sides of the transactions, I've been through all that, but now actually being the one signing the contracts and doing that gives me a whole different perspective.
Yeah, but you pretty much are on every single one of our properties when we go to sell. So
right.
You're like our agent, the man in charge that helps out with all of our dispositions. So yeah, you play a very vital role for us, even though you're still part of the joint venture program in like a very junior way, I guess.
Yeah, very much junior, but it's a real pleasure to do that. And like I said, I have a chance to learn and then also offer, bring my experience to bear on it.
Yeah, and it's been great, man. I mean, when Connor came to us, I mean, I'll tell you my side of the Connor Murphy story, and that was when we had a property for sale up in Victorville, I think it was, and we were working with an agent up there, and it just wasn't working out. The agent wasn't, they were kind of doing things their own way, and we kept saying we want them done a very specific way, and we're the client, so it's like, we're paying them a commission to sell this property. We said we want this specific photography company to take pictures of the home, and they said, don't worry about it. We got our own camera. We got all the pictures. So we kind of were like, all right, you know what? Let's let them handle it. Let's see what it's like to sit back and relax for once and let somebody else take care of the dirty work for us. The pictures they put up were embarrassing. Like, I don't know what they were doing. And, and I like the guy, it's hard to say, but, they just didn't meet our expectations. So we ended up canceling the listing with them, and we had no plan in mind on who we were going to hire, actually. And Connor had just happened to call me like that day or the day after that we canceled the listing. It was like, hey, I'm just chasing down these expired listings, or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? You got it. You got the job, man. You're hired. Like, because nobody called me. And for all you agents that are out there listening right now, call, because I got all your letters a week after I already signed the listing agreement with Connor.
And that's being aggressive, and that goes for investors, for anyone else. Whatever you're chasing, it pays infinitely to be aggressive. That's been one of the more lucrative phone calls I've ever made in my life. Okay. But
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's it's a blessing. But those are what's you have to understand is those are available every day to everyone.
Yeah.
Whatever you're looking for. If you're looking for flips, or you're looking for investment property, you're looking for whatever it is. If what I was taught was this by my mentor was just go after it, pick up the phone.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to hide from rejection by sending out a letter or to, hope that something falls in your lap. But if
Right.
you go chase that and, go through the no's, you find a yes, as I was fortunate enough to do.
And so be the master of your own destiny, right?
At least try.
Yeah. No, it worked out. And, and so far it's been great. I mean, the way we structure it, you're not the actual agent. You don't have to go do open houses for every single house that we have. You actually are sort of in charge of the agent on a lot of the properties that are kind of out of your area. If they're up in the high desert, then it makes perfect sense for you to be the full-on agent on it. But where we have an agent, and then you're like a co-listing agent with them, but really you hold all the power in that relationship.
The way you described it to me was a listing liaison was the way that was pitched to me, and it's it was the way you have the experience that you have has lent you like things done a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I have input I'd like to offer, but otherwise, I just execute what that is for you.
Yeah,
and it's worked pretty well for you so far. So like I said, I'm glad to be part of it.
Yeah, and I think it's working well for you too. So
absolutely,
especially because we got a couple of listings closing in like this week or next week. So that'll
should have
good.
One this week and then 2 more next week.
Awesome,
I think.
Really, one tomorrow? No kidding. Okay, cool. I'm good with that. So yeah, we'll anyway. We'll get to the offering side of things. That's how we all met Connor. Connor's a good dude. If anybody out there is looking for a good agent, I highly suggest giving Connor a call. He would love to.
We'd love to help you out, buying or selling, whatever it is. If you're investing, we can help walk you through that. We can help set you up with you guys. Whatever it is you're looking for, we're happy to help.
Very cool. I like that. Okay, so we're going to talk about offering a little bit. Since you've made tons of offers and you know exactly what that process is like, I'm going to share a little bit about what we kind of discovered. And last night, we had the Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club. That was our main monthly meeting. A little bit of a mix-up. For anybody that came and assumed we were at Loft 84 last night, we were supposed to be, but they had an error on their end, and they double booked us, and they couldn't cancel the other event. So we had to move to the Mission Inn, which is where we used to do the meeting. And the Mission Inn was kind enough to squeeze us in, and they made it happen. We're super appreciative of the Mission Inn last night,
nice.
Pulling it all together for us. And they made some amazing sliders, And if you missed out on the sliders, I'm sorry. I don't think we're doing that again, but they were amazingly good. So
nice.
So we went to the Mission Inn last night, and smaller audience because I think of the mix-up. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people think that we're on the last Wednesday of the month, when in fact we're on the 4th Wednesday of the month. And this month we have 5 Wednesdays. So
yeah, okay.
It was confusing, and I get it. That's what happened with Loft. They assumed we were on the last Wednesday, and hey, it happens. I think twice a year there's 5 Wednesdays in a month. So whatever. We'll figure it out. So anyway, at the Mission Inn, we had our interview there that Steven does. Steven does the interview with a guest, and he interviewed Jim Keller, who was our guest on here a couple weeks ago. And they had a good interview. They ended up talking a lot about how Jim goes about writing an offer, and it started out with, has nothing to do with with the piece of paper that's in front of you. Instead, the offering process starts with Jim walking up to the front door and noticing the big boat they have parked in their front yard, and his process is he walks in the door and says, I was going to come in here and just pitch you straight numbers, but I saw this boat out front, and I just thought, man, this is an amazing boat. Like, how'd you get this thing? That steering wheel is the perfect size for my hands. I mean, and let's talk about that for the next 45 minutes, and that's rapport building, really, Yeah,
and what Jim knows probably more than most is that very few people are actually going to read that contract that he's given them.
Yeah.
And so whether it's the standard RPA or it's any other one, very few people are going to take the time to sit down and read every line by line. And generally, in a situation like that, they're under tons of pressure anyway.
Right.
Here's this person buying my house, whatever it is. And so people don't read well in those situations. And so the rapport you have with that person, or the first impression, generally what we say with listings is that you've either got it or not within the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's similar with the buy. And we pretend like we're logical creatures, and we just aren't.
Right.
And if you know that, sales it makes a lot more sense.
Absolutely, yeah. And Jim was kind of putting it in a way last night where he was saying that you have to earn the right to even make an offer. You have to get to know the person so well that, because if you're talking to them and you're throwing out everything, you're pointing at every piece of art in their home, you're looking at every single tchotchke they have on their shelves, and you guys are just coming to no common ground, there's going to be no rapport. It's almost useless for you to even try to make an offer on this property. And he said it last night. There's been times where he's been at a property talking to a homeowner, and it's gotten to that point, and he's just like, I can't, there's no connection with this person, and he'll just leave. He won't even make him an offer because it's just a waste of his time. Move on to the next one.
Yeah, there's that emotional connection that we have, and it's selling isn't telling someone. So if you're telling them all the things you're going to do for them and why this is good for them, we can use all the logic we want, but without any sort of emotion, that's not going to make any impact.
True, and I think a large part of the rapport building process too is to kind of understand what their situation is. Because if you go in and you're telling them, I'm going to give you $300,000 cash tomorrow and you can move out and all this and that, they might come back and say, well, we don't need to move tomorrow, and if you give me that much cash, I don't know what to do with it. So that might present a different opportunity. So if you came in with that offer right up front, they might just say no, and that's it, and you have no idea why. But if you kind of dug into it a little bit in the beginning, you'll identify from them that they're moving out of state, but they're in no rush. They have a condo there already. They're just kind of going back and forth between their two houses or something, and they have no need to sell. And you're like, well, maybe we look at a way where I can buy this house from you and pay you over time instead of paying you cash up front. Maybe I could pay you monthly for it.
And like you were saying, the only way to know those things is by asking questions.
Yeah.
And so if without pre-qualification or without trying to understand what the situation is for that person sitting across the table, as opposed to just what you want. Yeah. If I'm just bringing to the table this is what I want to do. I want to buy your house, and I want to make lots of money, and I want to do this.
Yeah.
They don't care.
No, they don't
at all.
and they don't care about that beautiful contract you drafted up either, and all the very fine tuned words you've put in there. Yeah.
Right, and all the lingo and all the sales presentation. None of that matters to them. What matters to them is their situation.
Yeah.
Where they want to move, how long it's going to take for them to get there, and what they're going to walk away with at the end of it.
Sure.
And so if I can bring those things to them, then generally I've got a better starting, but I have to know that.
Right. Yeah, so when you present them an offer, you can say, look, you said you were in no rush to move. Then you can kind of go down that path a little bit and find out how much of no rush do you really have. I mean, what are you going to do with that money? Are you going to put it, in your savings account? Like, what's your plan with this money once you do receive it? If you don't really need it, you're just selling this house because you're kind of done with it. Or maybe in some cases, I've dealt with this a bunch of times where, parents die and their kids are left with the property and they live out of state. And, I remember one time the son was deployed over in Afghanistan and the daughter was in Ohio, and she knew nothing about this house and just was completely off-put by even having to deal with this property out in Banning. And the son was the one that had to deal with it, and he's deployed.
Wow.
And so every time he would come back on a leave, it was the time he had to deal with this house. So for him, the urgency was that he just needed to get it done when he was here and wanted to make it as seamless and easy as possible. And the daughter didn't care; she just wanted to get her half and be done with it. Yeah. And so that transaction was like all about ease of transaction for them. Was like, all right, cool. We'll have everything you need to sign and take care of when you come back on your next leave. Get it signed, and then we'll take care of it from there. You know, set up your wiring instructions with escrow. You'll get the money. You don't have to ever show up in California again. You know, and that was the ease of the transaction for him. That was important. But then you have some people who, you know, they don't need the money. There's nothing wrong with the house, and a lot of times that's not going to be me as their buyer, you know. Like, so, and that happens like 90% of the time.
Yeah.
So, you know, so that's kind of the majority of it anyway for me.
Well, yeah, and that's one of the things we find is people rarely move just for the money. It's
right.
rare, you know, that, you know, the market's hit this point, so I want to move now. Whatever else that's involved with it, you're uprooting your family or you're just packing up all your junk and moving that. It's, you know, there's it's death, debt, and taxes.
Sure.
Those are the big ones. But it's there's usually something else driving that. It's a job transfer or divorce, or someone's born, they need a bigger house. And so, like you were talking about, if we ask questions and actually listen to the answers, then we can find out where this person is and what they need out of the situation, what will make it work for them.
So when you go into a home, what sort of a question would you lead off with? Like, what would be like your first, like, pointed question that you're really trying to get them to start talking about the things you need to understand? Like, what would you start with?
Generally, we've done a lot of this. For me, I've done a lot of that before I've gotten to the home. And so I've done this on the phone to determine if I even need to be there.
Okay.
And so we do call that the pre-qualification process. And it's the first one is, you know, when I get there, if everything I say makes sense and you feel, you know, comfortable and confident that I can sell your home, are you planning to list with me? And that'll determine right away. That'll get a lot of everything on the table, because they may have no interest in listing right now, or no interest in selling to me or anyone else.
Right. They might just be kind of shopping around to see what their house is worth and whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Some people are honestly just nuts and just will say yes to anyone who asks to come over to their house.
They just want a friend to hang out with for a little bit.
Right.
Bring your CD. They might, you know, you guys can play some music for them.
And so I generally will ask a lot of that before I get to the home.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, preparing for the appointment, preparing for all these things to go in. If we're going to buy a property, I have to know a lot before I get there. And so we'll ask, you know, when do you plan on moving? And it's really, for me, it's rather than trying to dodge around it, it's just cutting right to it. And if they're planning on moving right away, like you were talking about, if they say, I have to move next week, I've got to be out of here, or I'm deploying to Afghanistan and I need all this taken care of,
right,
a lot of that will come out at that point.
Yeah, so you're trying to establish urgency first. Is like,
right,
you know, why are you selling? And it's a common thing too with investors. Like, where, I mean, if you're going into a house as a realtor, you're going to do those pre-qualification questions, and you're going to do all your homework before you end up going to the house. So us too, whenever an investor shows up to a house, we already know how much we can pay maximum for that property, and all we're looking around for is, you know, can I reduce the rehab budget on this at all, or do I have to increase my rehab budget? You know, because as a flipper, we're looking at flipping this property, and we don't flip houses that don't need work. So
yeah, there's low margins in that.
Yeah, pretty much. You can make like a 4% margin, and you know, if that's if they have an urgency to move. But the people that really have an urgency to move and have to just kind of take whatever offer they can get are the people that have major problems with the homes. Correct. You know, and it's such a relief for them. It's amazing to see like these people sometimes where they're just so relieved to finally have this issue out of their life.
It can be. And if you have a home like that where there's huge structural problems, or there's been a fire, or there's been huge leaks or something like that, and the idea of going on the market and selling to, you know, another homeowner who's going to be living in that place, right, is terrifying. And it legally it's shaky ground, because you can try to disclose everything,
sure,
and you know there's realtors who will help you do that. It's possible, but for, like you're saying, those people just don't always feel comfortable doing that, and I can certainly understand that. It's a scary place to be. And
when we come in with an offer that says we'll buy it as is, knowing, you know, taking all the faults and everything, and you are scot-free of this problem, like we would never come back and sue you for anything. We're buying it, you know, expecting there to be a lot of issues with it. Yeah, it's a huge relief for them, because I know as soon as that property, and even for us, I mean, we order a property inspection before we even put the properties up in the market now, because we want to make sure anything that gets called on an inspection is going to get fixed before a homeowner makes an offer to us to purchase.
Right.
So, you know, because we don't want them to get an inspection report back, and maybe we missed a couple electrical plugs, which has happened. Maybe a couple of the plugs don't actually work. Maybe we just kind of assumed they did because they looked new, or but maybe the wires going to them weren't hooked up anywhere. I don't know. Like, that happened in a place in Palm Springs. I remember, we had like a whole wall with like the plugs on both sides. That wire was cut up in the attic, and we just assumed those wires that we were plugging into the new outlet worked, and they didn't. Nobody actually put a tester in there. So it wasn't until the inspector came through and he said, "Yeah, I'm getting nothing on these two right here," and it's around the other just because they cut it up in the attic for whatever reason. Maybe someone's going to put in a ceiling fan and never actually made the connection. Who knows? But then we had to make good on that and fix that. So, yeah. But it worked once we sold it. But there's things you just don't realize.
Right, and that's one of the as going in to make an offer, that's something you can sell to the seller. There, you say, I'm taking on all the legal responsibility here for all disclosures, for all the problems, all the faults with your house are no longer going to be your problem.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to do that, as you guys have been, and willing to take responsibility of that and fix those things, like you mentioned, the home inspection prior to getting the home on the market, that really is a huge time saver.
Yeah.
It's so that way when we go and present to the buyer, it's when they're talking and start negotiating price and these sorts of things, we can come back and say, well, here's the home inspection, here's everything that's repaired. This home really is turnkey.
Yeah.
And it becomes something that seems like an expense, ends up paying you quite a bit more in the end.
Right, yeah, it's kind of a marketable thing we can add. And we've been talking lately about putting together like a folder that we would be able to give to the owner, because obviously we have like new appliances that have warranties, and like, fill out your warranty card because it's a new appliance and it's yours. I didn't want to fill it out for us because I knew we weren't going to own it for much longer. So, so we want to kind of give them like the home inspection, the appraisal, like put all that stuff in there and just kind of say, here's your packet. So if you ever need these things, this is your like my purchase of the home packet. Like you kind of get with like a new home purchase. You get like the folder with all the stuff in there, and you could read about all the ways that you're going to be paying crazy amounts of money over the next 40 years for Mello-Roos and whatnot.
And that's really just the opposite side of what we're talking about with offers, is making the deal as attractive as possible to the buyer. So we want to do that when we're purchasing. We want this deal to look as attractive as possible to the seller. So we need to know what it is they're after. And the same we know a little bit more what the buyers are after. They want a home that isn't going to fall apart. They're not going to have a bunch of expenses.
Yeah.
Is worth what they're paying. Less so on the seller side. We have to dig a little bit to find that. And sitting down at the table is a great place to do that, because it's what the axiom that my mentor, he says, you never know the truth until you're actually sitting down at the table. They'll tell you things over the phone. People will say this, but we're trained by telemarketers, by society, to lie on the phone. That's
of course.
That's the knee-jerk no. And so it behooves us to sit down with someone and, like you talked about, learn about what their goals are with their home. And from there, that's how we can craft an offer that makes sense for them.
Yeah, and that's, another thing too is you can kind of put yourself in the shoes of an advocate for them. You can be like, look, I buy plenty of houses. I have no need to buy your house. And it's true. We don't need to buy anybody's home. Like, we have plenty of deals coming from all kinds of different places. I have no need to try and slip something under the radar to get a deal from somebody. Like, I'm actually here to try to solve their problem. So what we're trying to do is identify what is the problem. Maybe it's that boat that's out front. Like the payment on that thing's $2,000 a month. I don't know. And they'd never take it out. Like, they thought they would take it out all the time, but it's just sitting there rusting. And that could be the thorn in their side. Maybe I say, hey, how about I buy your home and I buy that boat from you, and I could find somebody to buy it, or maybe I want a boat. I don't know. Maybe I want to have that nightmare in my life.
You're making me feel bad. I bought a boat last week.
Uh-oh. Is it a good boat? A good power boat, or what?
So far, it didn't sink last weekend, so I think I'm all right.
It's a good sign. Just like, is it a power boat, though? You got
Yeah, inboard, outboard. It's my first one. My wife really wanted a boat, and she finally talked me into it. So
nice. And so while everybody else is going to like Lake Havasu this weekend, you're going to be back at home.
Yeah,
without the boat. Well, the boat will be there, but
yeah, the boat's at the river. I'll be at home working.
All right. It's good though. You went out last weekend, so you kind of beat the rush.
Yeah.
Now, I heard a lot of people that were out at the river last weekend came back like this week because they're like, I'm not sticking out there for the Memorial Day madness.
It gets wild.
Yeah.
It's so crowded, and people love it, and God bless them.
Yeah, exactly. I guess if you like to see that kind of a show,
Yeah. That's my younger days, maybe.
Yeah, to go watch that disaster in action, Good times. I've never actually been to the river. I've never been out there.
How long have you lived here?
I've lived in Southern California my entire life. I'm like fourth generation.
Wow.
I've never been there. Yeah, it was funny.
That's mind blowing to me.
My parents were not like that type of. They didn't have ATVs. They didn't have motorcycles. They didn't have a boat. We didn't have go-karts. We didn't have any of that stuff growing up. I had a bicycle, and if I wanted to go out and do something, I'd go out on my bike and
All right.
go jump some jumps and stuff. That's what me and Steve used to do together.
Nice.
We used to build jumps, which is why there's a company we're trying to form. We're actually going to kind of throw back to the to some old bike stuff. The name of the company, we can be kicking around some ideas, but we have some we really like, and they tie into like our old BMX days when we used to like jump jumps and ride bikes together.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really interesting to me. It seems even knowing, because I think he's out there right now. You guys have never made a trip together?
No, we never did. He always his family would go to Glamis and they'd do all this cool stuff, and we'd stay at home and go to the Olive Garden, and that's probably why I'm much fatter than he is, and that's going to change. I'm supposed to start a weight loss challenge here pretty soon.
Oh, nice. Who's in the challenge? Is it on you, or is it?
It's me with like a bunch of people, just kind of in our little sphere of influence.
Awesome.
You're not welcome to come because you got no weight to lose. I'm sorry.
I'm trying to go the other direction. I appreciate it though.
Trying to gain some weight. I can help you out in that regard. I'm pretty good at gaining weight. Yeah. So it'll be fun. The weight loss challenge. It's going to be like a few of the guests we've had here on the show. I think Jim's going to be in on it. Steve, myself. Charlie Hustle.
Oh, nice.
I think Thomas Chappelle's going to do it with us. A few other people. We're going to do like a big buy-in. Everybody puts a bunch of money into a pot.
I like it.
And whoever loses the most weight, and this is all going to be monitored by like a personal trainer that's going to like keep tabs on everybody. And
what's the time frame?
I think we're doing either 4 to 6 weeks. I can't remember. Sometime like that. We're going to start like June 1st. So this could be fun.
Okay.
So hopefully that means that everybody's going to push each other. I was kind of talking to a couple of the other guys about it. We're like, okay, we can do it one of two ways, where it's like it's a contest, and we all put $500 in, and the winner wins it, or we could kind of do it collaboratively, where everybody puts in $500, and whoever meets their goal gets their money back, and if they don't, then everybody else splits it. I was like, that way we could be more encouraging, and I'm not going to be enticed to have pizza delivered to your office suite, send you an edible arrangement, or something.
Can we set up like a side betting channel on this?
Oh, there you go.
We take you guys like horses, where it's
hey, I'm not again it.
Okay.
But then again,
I'm very much on board with that.
I can't take a rake because that's illegal. But we'll we'll have to talk about that sometime off the air.
Yeah, I'm in.
Anyway, what were we talking about? Oh, real estate, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about doing some offers on some properties. For those of you just tuning in right now, we were talking about making offers on some properties and how we go about building rapport with the person, the seller, and talking about how we can find out what their need is and how to meet their needs with the offer. Because like Connor was saying, you can't just go into the house saying, I'll give you $300,000 cash and that's it and that's all. But they say, I have other things in mind. I don't just need $300,000 cash.
Right. So we ask questions, why do you want to move?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you moving to? How soon do you have to be there? What do you need to make that happen?
Yeah, how are you getting there?
Right. How?
Are you hiring a moving company? Like one thing Jim threw out last night was, are you going to drive the moving truck or are you flying? He's like, if I could bump you and your wife's ticket to a first class seat, would you sign the contract with me? Like that was one thing he threw out there, because you can really offer anything you want.
Absolutely. It isn't when you're sitting there, we've constructed this idea that real estate is very formalized, and agents, we've contributed to this because we want to control the situation and to make it, and it really is whatever the agreement is between the two parties. And so if you're coming in as a private individual making an offer, whatever you can do to make that attractive to that person, there's really very few things that aren't allowed,
Yeah. And it's kind of a shame, because sometimes, well, a lot of the agents I've met in the past, they're very unwilling to work out a creative deal with a seller. So, and to me, it only means to me that they didn't spend the time with the seller to understand what they might be comfortable with. Because I've proposed lease options to sellers where that makes a lot of sense in a particular deal, where the seller, a lot of times this happens with like probate type deals where the beneficiaries, the children, have taken the property and they don't really need the money. I remember one case, the two kids were retired and they didn't need the money. They already had a comfortable retirement already. It's two daughters, and what are they going to do with this money? I mean, they're, by just selling the house, it's just going to put more money in their account, and they didn't really have any plan with it. Nothing. It would have made sense to do a lease option, or maybe even partner up with us for us to do the renovations on the property. So that way I don't have to come out of pocket as much money. That way I don't have to put in, because we spent a lot of money to purchase that home. I think we spent, over $1 million to buy the house.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And gosh, what did we spend? I think all in total, we spent around $300,000 on the rehab, and it was a lot of money to lay out. I mean, $1.3 million is a lot of money to a lot of people.
Yeah,
so,
that's a hefty risk on the line there.
It is, and what we could have done, instead of giving them the 1 or the 100, or the 1 million, or whatever it was up front, we could have just spent the money on the rehab, partnered up with the sisters on the project, said, hey, look, we'll take care of it from here. We'll do all the renovations. We'll handle the sale. And then when it closes, then we can, move your money into other things too. We could, potentially have you guys invest with us and put into some other deals or something like that. There was some options there, but the agent was uncreative on the front side, and it was only, they just want to sell. And it was obvious they didn't, every time because we ended up bumping into them, and they didn't really care about selling. They just, they didn't want to have to maintain this property anymore.
Yeah. And that's on us too, because we have to ask the questions, and we have to actually listen to what the people are saying, because people in those types of situations, they will let you know what's going to work for them, and then it's on us to figure out how we can do that. And a lot of, I think, as realtors, a lot of that becomes, obviously we live in a litigious state, and so the fear of creativity comes a lot from that.
Sure,
we're trained from the beginning that anything out of the ordinary, you're going to get sued, and you have to. But if I've been very fortunate to have, a great broker, great teachers where we just document. And as long as, and the communication is key, so as long as everyone is on the same page and understands what's going on and everything is documented, you generally are going to be okay.
Yeah, and a lot of it too is that people don't know there are multiple ways to sell a property. The most traditional way is just a buyer comes in, he buys the property, usually brings a lender, and and that's it. It's done. That's one way to buy a property, yes, but there are hundreds of ways to buy properties.
Oh yeah, it's unlimited. It's only limited by our imagination.
Exactly.
So
and so something as simple as like a lease, most people understand that, where you can say, like, I'll rent it from you. That most people get that, and you can say, but I want the option to purchase it at this price, within the next year. So I might decide within the next year I want to buy it. So I want your word that I can buy it for, let's bring it down to realistic, Inland Empire numbers, and say I want to be able to purchase that probably for $250,000, within the next year, and you'll honor that price, over the next 12 months. But in the meantime, I'm going to pay you a rent for it. I'm going to pay you rent of $1,500 a month for the next 12 months, and because you're going to do this for me, I'll give you a down payment of say $5,000. I'll give you $5,000 today. I'll pay $1,500 a month, and then you promise to sell it to me at the end of 12 months, or at that time, anytime in there, I can buy it for $250. Some people might actually go for something like that.
It could, like, depending on the seller's situation, that could make a ton of sense for them. If they think the market's going to decrease, that would be an excellent option, because then you're locking it in at that price. If they think that they may have a better option after that time, but this will work for them, it's good to have that in their back pocket. Maybe they think their financial situation is going to change quite a bit in the next 6 months, and so then it becomes more attractive. Or maybe they just need to get into the next fiscal year because they're going to get beat up on taxes. And like we've talked about, asking them what their situation is, and digging into that more, like you talked about, spending the time to find out what they need can make all the difference.
Absolutely. And so those are fun little ways to structure deals, and like you said, I mean, it's limited by your imagination.
Right.
Like I'm like digging into my memory banks of like some of the more creative, fun things we've done, with properties. But it's just so many times it's not happened. It's not only happened once; it's happened multiple times where the agent really did get in the way, and it's because they didn't themselves understand a creative deal. And like we're trying to explain it to them, and they're saying, maybe if you could explain it to my seller, I can get them to go along with it. It's like, well, if I explain it to the seller, what are you here for? Getting
a check, right?
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to pay you a commission, but we're doing all okay. That makes sense for me.
They're delegating.
Sure. That's sometimes the hard part with dealing with agents for us, because we're not typical buyers. We're not, we try not to operate in the typical world most of the time, but
And then again, I think that a lot of that is all fear-based, where we come to expect this situation to happen the same way, and especially agents. So we have this way we do deals normally, where we go in and list it, and then another agent brings in an offer, and then we negotiate and we do the term, etc.
Yeah.
And then it closes. When you have an atypical buyer like you come in, then that changes things, and it takes a little more time, and again, that's on us, because if that's, say I'm representing a seller and that really is in their best interest to look at a deal like this, where maybe you may not net as much money, but you really have a lot less legal risk and it ends up being a lot better for you, and you just want to get out of this, then this is the situation that you want.
Sure. Yeah, and I guess sometimes too, the agent sometimes doesn't understand that the condition of the property is an issue. They don't understand what lendability is, and you see these homes that go in and out of escrow like 4 times. It's because the agent keeps accepting these conventional or these FHA or VA offers that keep coming in. And once the appraisal's done or the inspection comes in, they're saying, we can't lend on this. It has too many problems. And, they fall out of escrow, and then they just put it back in escrow with another offer from, maybe they did conventional first, then they went FHA, then they went VA or something, and it doesn't seem to work out. And it's like, if the agent could have just told the seller initially, this isn't going to go conventional, we need to look for investor purchasers on this property.
And that does take a little bit of just, recognition in the first part, and that becomes when we're first talking with the seller, and we go in and walk in and, oh my God, your house is destroyed.
Yeah.
And being honest with someone about that. It's really hard to sit in someone's home and tell them their home's a piece of junk and no one's going to buy it the way it is. But if we're willing to do that, that really is in what's in their best interest.
It's funny because, I don't understand why more people don't do it. It's where, the bank's already put out the criteria for what makes a lendable property. Everything in the home needs to work like it's supposed to. That's a given. So if you say, look, here's some problems I see going down the road, you say, here's Fannie Mae's guidelines for a loan, and this is what the home needs to fit. This is these are criteria. All the mechanicals need to work. So I see you have a heater in the home that doesn't work. That's going to be a problem. That's going to get called out. So you have an option here. You can either fix the heater, or we have to sell it to somebody that's going to buy it for cash.
Right, and that's
or hard money.
Right, I think a lot of realtors will do that, where they'll explain if they've been down that road enough, they'll see that situation coming. We do have it where, like those ones you talked about, you see go in and out and in and out and in and out, and they just don't understand that this problem is going to be resolved one way or the other, or it's not going to sell. And
right.
So that cash buyers can be the solution to that, and it's again understanding that when we go in and being able to explain that to seller as the buyer. Say, look, this is going to end up costing you money to do this, or you can sell the problem to me.
Yeah, pretty much. And a lot of times they sell it to us because they don't have the money to actually fix the problem.
Right, and it's coming out of pocket with that. Those things add up. If you're fixing the roof or broken windows or a heater or something like that, those costs add up. And if if all you're doing is getting your money back out, you're working for free.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, nobody wants to do that. So rapport building is obviously really crucial. But then, so that's obviously establishing the thing. And then it comes time to write up the offer. That's the next part of it. And you've probably already come to terms verbally, I would imagine, right? Yeah,
in this situation, you generally, if you're going to be writing it up, it's usually you've talked with them on the phone, you kind of know where they are, and you've asked questions, you've done your work, and so you have an idea. And so usually we'll have the offer prepared before we go in there.
Oh, wow. You actually have a whole thing ready to go. Huh?
Ready, and it's just that way, we can, if we need to make changes, everyone can do that, and you can just initial it. But we come in prepared, and we know what it's going to be, and then we can just slide it over to them.
Okay.
We've already explained all the numbers, which they're not listening to anyway, and then they can just, make the decision on their own. And it's little things like Jim, I mentioned, I'd never heard of upgrading someone to first class. I think that's a genius idea.
Yeah. Hey, they're moving across the country.
That's a long flight.
How are they getting there? Do you want to sit in coach, or would you rather sit in first class?
Right. And it's, but doing that, and then we present the offer, and for us, it's the same. We start at the bottom, start at the number. Don't try to hide it. Don't try to pretend like we're getting around something. This is the number. This is what I'm offering you. This is the money we're going to put into escrow in the initial portion. Right. These are the time periods. And then from there, you have to sit in silence and
Yeah,
wait.
yeah, like let them object or whatever. And,
Right.
you know, I'm sure, you know, I mean, it's happened to me a bunch of times too, where somebody that's their opportunity, because you know whoever throws out the first number loses, they say in negotiation, and I wouldn't say it's necessarily true. It depends on how you present your first offer, you know, but especially if you established ahead of time, getting to know what they want and all that stuff, your offer should match exactly what they're looking for. And, you know, they almost look at it and say, yes, this actually makes a lot of sense to us. Like this is exactly what we would need.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't make sense to just sell or something like that. Or yeah, it made complete sense to sell, but yeah, I'd rather we have a longer escrow period so we can close escrow on another house or whatever, contingent sales.
Right.
Yeah.
It's working through that. If I've done my job properly, and if I've, you know, been a good salesman and I've listened to their thoughts, listened to their objections, and answered those things, really the close at the end there should be the easiest portion. Everything I've done to that point should lead to that, to
Right.
an effective close. And I can really easily tell when I haven't done a good job, because it becomes, what about this, and what about this, and that price is horrible, and then I know I need to practice more.
Yeah, well, sometimes, you know, people they're going off of bad information. Some people will say, well, I was on Zillow, and, you know, Zillow says my house is worth $500,000, and you're telling me I'm only going to be able to sell for $300,000. You know, I don't understand. You know, you say, well, let's take a look at some sales, and it's probably why you bring a comparative market analysis with you,
Right.
when you go to the sit, I would imagine.
Yeah, usually for us, we've delivered that ahead of time, so that way they can be angry at the paper and not at me.
Right.
And then, because in the end, the reality is reality, and the numbers are the numbers. It's not, I don't get to determine the sales price. Otherwise, I would just make every home $10 million, and I
Right.
retire real fast.
Sure.
And you know, unfortunately, neither do the sellers. And so, if the market tells us what the sales price is, then it's just our job to present that in a light that they can understand.
Yeah, and sometimes you get those tricky properties, the ones that, you know, are out in the middle, and I'm sure you get this a lot more in the high desert than we do, like in Riverside, because Riverside's a much more urban area, you know, than some suburban areas of like Apple Valley and Adelanto and stuff.
We don't have a comp for 3 miles, and so
Right.
we have to.
Yeah, and somebody decided to build their mansion out there, you know, and you're like, okay, I've not had any 6,000 square foot homes on 10 acres sell within the last, I don't know, ever. Like, so how do I comp this thing? How do I value this property? And it's tough, because I've seen them. You
Yeah.
know, people have sent me deals like that where they're saying the after repair value on this house is going to be $850,000, and I'm like, in Apple Valley, where in Apple Valley is this property? Like, is there like some hidden neighborhood in Apple Valley I'm not aware of that is selling for this price? And I start running comps, and I'm like, I mean, how do you value this thing?
Yeah,
You know?
that really can be tough. For the upper end in our area, we have a trick with that where it's, once you get above $500,000-600,000 there, we can actually, the way we break it down is, if you have $500,000 or $600,000, you can buy anything anywhere in the high desert. And
Yeah.
so you're not just competing with your neighbors. You're now competing with all the people in Oak Hills. You're competing with everyone in Spring Valley Lake.
Yep.
And so it behooves us to look at that. And so once we do that and we show them what they can buy for that amount of money, it generally becomes clear, you know, that it may not be $850.
Sure. Unless, you know, I mean, unless you have the same amenities they have, you know, the proximity to the amenities that are in Oak Hills, for example, you know, you want a similar type property. And that's the hard part, is really finding a comparable property. And it's comparable for a lot of reasons, you know, because, you know, you're going to have to bring in the school district into the fray there. You have to bring in, you know, your access to a grocery store, you know, like how far away is the highway, you know, things like that. And it gets tough on those types of ones. So
Again, that's on us to, as either, if you're an investor, going in there and being able to explain that and look at this, you want to know, one, for what you're going to be able to sell afterwards. If that ARV is off by a substantial amount, you're going to go out of business very quickly.
yeah, because that could be 100,000. That's what's tough about those higher end homes.
Right. And so then if you want to know that for yourself, and then the second part of that is the skill to be able to communicate that to the seller,
Right.
and still put a deal together. And that's why that's why we do either the pre-listing package, or if we're going to buy, then the pre-purchase package. And it's that allows people time, because people are generally smart. People can do math. And so when they look at those things, you know, as emotionally tied to their home as they are, generally the house that we're going to be buying, there's going to be some problems.
Yes.
And so they'll be able to, honestly look at that. And if they can, then usually we can put something together.
Hopefully. Sometimes you get these people that are a little unrealistic about the style of their home, where they have like all their old wood paneling up still, and they got their wallpaper, and they love it, and that's great. I'm happy they love it, but they're trying to sell the home, and that's not marketable today because there's 90% of people don't like wallpaper, and the other 10% of people don't like your wallpaper. So, pretty much that has to go. It's it's just one of those things.
And that's one of those things where I can tell a seller that until I'm blue in the face, and they are never going to listen.
Right.
And that's going back. That's an emotional attachment for them. They raised their kids there.
Yeah.
These things. They designed this home. They put that stuff in when they first moved in, and it still has that emotional attachment, that emotional sheen on it that doesn't have for other buyers.
Right.
And so what we try to do is put them in the position of a buyer who's coming into their home.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we can do that in the initial walk-in. When I first go into a home to look at it, we don't let the sellers come with me.
Okay.
And so the whole time I'm looking at the house, they're sitting at the kitchen table wondering,
waiting.
oh, he's seeing this, and then what about that stain over here, and then what's going on there?
Yeah.
And that serves two purposes. One, I get to see it without them in my ear, so I get to actually, I'm not getting sold on the property already.
Right.
And then, but it also, it gives them a moment to think about their home from an outsider's perspective, which is only going to save them money.
Yeah.
That's only something that's going to help.
So I wonder if it'd be fun to kind of like after you walk through the home, the first thing you do is sit down and say, so what do you think I found that's not going to be that most people probably won't like?
I was actually taught that, and so we'll sit down and say, bet you think I wasn't going to see that stain in the living room there. And,
yeah.
And it allows them a moment. First, they have the kind of nervousness where they have that experience of someone walking through their house, a stranger in there looking through
Sure.
it. But then also, they get to understand most of these things. It's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a reflection on them. It's not a reflection it's a home. Things get broken. Things get stained.
Sure.
Happens. Life happens.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can completely understand that. I have 2 cats, so stains happen.
Yeah, stains do happen.
Which is why we have mostly hard flooring, so that there's it's easy to clean up.
Fair enough.
I don't know what it is, man. The cat just doesn't eat, and then like you give him food, and he just like engorges himself on it and then throws it up. And I'm like, what is wrong with this cat?
It's a cat. That's the first problem.
That's
you got
the
a cat.
problem.
Yeah. After that, I don't know what to do for you.
I can't make him in anything else. He's a cat for life.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I like cats. Cats are cool. They're dangerous animals. That's really what they are. They're just really small. If you were to take a domestic house cat and make him like a 6 foot long thing, that's a pretty dangerous animal.
Yes.
If a cat were as big as a dog, dogs wouldn't stand a chance.
I don't believe I've ever heard that put that way. Okay.
They can jump high. They got crazy nails, teeth. They're fast.
They're tigers, basically, is what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's one of the most dangerous animals on the planet.
Right. Okay.
Next to hippos, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah. What were we talking about? Oh, we were talking about offering on property.
Hippos. We were talking about hippos.
That's right. We went off on that. Stains in houses. So you find these people's homes and you find the things wrong with them. And they're probably thinking, excuse me, that's probably putting them in the frame of mind at that time. That's like, okay, he's walking through the house with a fresh set of eyes. He's not us. And you're going to come back and say, I just found some interesting things about your home that.
Well, yeah, you know how it is when you're at your house and it just becomes your home. But then as soon as people are coming over, we got all this stuff over here, and we got to stuff all the mail in this drawer here, and then we got to pick up this towel that's been sitting in the corner forever. And these things that we don't see, when someone's coming over, then we see them, and that's the purpose of part of the purpose of going over there.
Like, oh, that lock works. You just have to jiggle the key a little bit.
Right.
Like, that's not going to be as charming to the new buyer. They're going to think this is a pain in the butt. I'd like to make this a new lock, please.
Yeah, and you got to jiggle the
handle on the toilet.
Yeah, just to flush here and all these things. It's normal. Something that you may not take the time to fix. It doesn't bother you. These things start to add up, and then obviously when they've got bigger problems, having a outside set of eyes that isn't emotionally attached to that can be a huge bonus for sellers.
Sure. And for us too, we also have to get them to start thinking like us, where it's like, when we go to sell, who's our competition when we go to sell? Mm-hmm. So we're trying to hit a certain price ourselves, and we're competing against new homes and other renovated homes. That's what we're competing against. other renovated homes didn't leave that lock that you have to jiggle. They didn't leave the stain on the carpet. You know, they didn't keep the wallpaper and the wood paneling. Like they went with a smooth wall, white. They put in new white. They put white shaker cabinets in the kitchen. You know, they put in quartz countertops. Like, this is going to be our competition. We have to look the part. We have to look like they do. Otherwise, we're not going to get the price that they're getting. So sometimes you have to kind of put them in the HGTV mindset and say, you know, when you watch HGTV, what do you see them doing on there? Are they putting in the wood paneling these days and putting up the wallpaper? Or are we, you know, or are we taking down that stuff typically? You know, and I don't know. It could be kind of fun. It's not to be like demeaning or anything like that to folks.
It isn't, and it honestly, it's a big lie that agents will tell sellers. You know, it just takes one to get that.
Oh,
and
man, I've heard that so many times, and it does, especially if you have a very like interesting property. You know, like you got horse stables out back. That's something that you already kind of limited your selling market already, because a lot of people don't want to take care of horses. They don't care, but you know, you have a horse stable in the back, but it's a 1-bedroom house, and that's not going to work either. You know, so to find that guy that has 6 horses and he lives by himself, I mean, that's going to be a tough property to sell. You know,
right? And so, but the way we always try to make this clear is that if you're saying it only takes one, if you have a buyer pool of one, what does that do to price?
Oh man,
and that really is. That always brings it home, because people say it just takes one person to love it. Even if only one person loves it, that one person isn't going to pay more than everyone else for it.
Yeah, yeah. If you're talking just basic supply and demand,
right?
There's no demand and plenty of supply over here. You know, you're gonna get priced downward. It's just going to happen.
And that really is, you know, the biggest one when you're going in to buy and you're going in to make offers, is understanding that regardless of all the emotion that comes in with selling a home and all these different things that we have now, the basic law of supply and demand determines everything.
Absolutely.
And so if there's no demand for a home with broken windows and a broken heater and a leaky roof and all this thing, and there's a large supply of homes that don't have these things, you know, the price is going to be determined by that. And
so I've even heard of people, because when you have a house that's in that condition with the leaky roof and the broken windows, a bunch of investors will offer on that all at the same time, because it might hit the MLS and all the investors just rush to that house saying, this is perfect, this is exactly what we want. And then the seller gets this idea that the house is worth more because they're getting all these offers coming in.
Right.
And then it gets bid up sometimes, you know, because an inexperienced investor, somebody that's maybe their first one, they end up paying way too much for this house. And, you know, we get to watch them lose their rear ends on these deals. And we're like, oh, man, that's a bummer. You know, the seller got more out of it, I guess. It's good for them. But, you know, it's too bad for the poor investor guy who got into it with too much, and, you know, they're going to lose something on it.
And that's our biggest caution to investors, especially if they're if you don't have huge capital behind you, you can go out of business very quickly with that. And we see that. We see some of the large investors will bid homes up specifically to eliminate competition from the market. And so if you see that other big-time investors are bidding against you, they may be doing that to bait you into doing this.
Right, exactly.
That does happen. It's a cutthroat business, and so that's there's, again, supply and demand determines everything. And so if you're confident of where your offer is, you know, selling that rapport and all those things that you're building with there, that becomes the difference.
Yep, absolutely. And that about wraps it up for us. For those of you that want to check out real estate investing, go on meetup.com, look up the Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club, and go check out all of our events we have coming up. And I want to thank our guest, Connor Murphy, for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you all again next Thursday, 4 p.m., Flip Flop Investor Show right here on KCAA. Have a good week, everyone. Take care.
KCAA Loma Linda, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM, and now 102.3 FM.